Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking.
You're not talking about
Prohibits
the dangerous
discrimination
weapons,
based
are
on
you?
hairstyles.
We're on the air.
What? On hairstyle.
We're live.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining our show today. Today, we have my superstar panel, Attorney Milton and Attorney Vanita Banks, who had extensive resumes. Also, I'd like to thank each and every one of you that join our program each week. Now, for the people in Atlanta, Pasadena, Chicago, Indianapolis, it's a live call-in show. You can reach us at 833-653-3529, 833-653-3529. I'm interested in hearing from some of the folks out in Atlanta that tunes in. Today, we'll start off. There's so many news stories that are important, but there was one that hit the country like a bombshell this week, a legal issue. An informant for the FBI named Alexander Smirnov was taken into custody this week. He was charged with perjury. Now, this is important because the Republicans in the House of Representatives started an impeachment inquiry based on the fact that Smirnov was a credible FBI informant, and that because of his allegation that he made, he claimed that the vice president and his son took $5 million bribe from people in Ukraine. However, all the information he gave to the FBI and to the Congress was generated by Russians' intelligence, the KGB. So in other words, the Congress of the United States of America started an impeachment inquiry into the President of the United States based upon what Russian operative submitted to them. So now we have a foreign nation directing our Congress. It's a sad day, folks, and thank goodness he got arrested. But ironically, Fox News ran the story, they say, over 1,300 times, and they never, to this day, to the best of my knowledge, posted a retraction. They were saying that the president took a bribe. It was false. It was a lie, and it's unforgivable in the sense that now we know that a Russian agency created this story. But the second biggest story, though, hit like a bombshell this week, dealt with the Alabama Supreme Court. A person dropped a frozen embryo, and the Alabama Supreme Court said in vitro fertilization, when a patient inadvertently destroyed a frozen embryo, could be held liable in a wrongful death lawsuit. They determined that an embryo, a frozen embryo, is a person in the state of Alabama. An embryo, which they take and save in labs, sometimes for years, is now considered a person in Alabama. Now, Donald Trump said that he was against this decision, but it was his decision that led to this unfortunate result. The U.S. Supreme Court added 3 justices during its administration. Those 3 judges overturned Roe versus Wade. And when they overturned Roe versus Wade, what occurred is that the state then was left on their own to make laws. And this is one of the laws they made. So what's the problem? It's going to create a lot of situations. We'll start with Attorney Banks. Attorney Banks, have you followed that IVF case?
Absolutely, Attorney Lee. I've been following the case this week, and the really wrong decision of the Texas Supreme Court, I'm sorry, of the Alabama Supreme Court that ruled that frozen embryos that were accidentally destroyed, I believe they were dropped in the clinic, that they constituted children. And so the Supreme Court had had reversed a decision by the trial court after the family of those embryos, they filed a wrongful death case, alleging that the accidental destruction of those frozen embryos by the clinic constituted wrongful death of a child. And so the trial court dismissed the case. The Alabama Supreme Court reversed it this week in a shocking decision that just shows the consequences of the earlier reversal of Roe versus Wade, which the former president takes credit for, as you mentioned, Attorney Lee, by appointing 3 conservative judges to the Supreme Court. So there's been a lot of flip-flopping this week on the GOP side of the House as they're recognizing that this is a result of their position, and they have been, and of course, the former president has spoken out and stating that he strongly supports IVF, and I understand that the state legislature is now drafting legislation to enact an exception that would support IVF in the state. Because what's happened is that the clinics and hospitals have now paused IVF in the state. And so couples and clinics are in limbo because they can now be subject to civil and/or criminal prosecution as a result of this decision.
Hey, Milton,
Yes.
this terrible decision, as tragic as it appears, there's one positive aspect about it. That is that in our state, for example, an unborn child at 32-week gestational time period is considered a person in Denver. So if a pregnant woman has an accident and loses her unborn child at 29 weeks, there's only one claim. But if she's at 33 weeks, there's 2 claims, one for the mother and one for the unborn child. Well, this decision, as bad as it is, says that birth begins in a lab. And so if that's the case, it opened up an endless amount of potential litigation. The mother could be in IVF treatment, could have a bad accident, have to forego her treatment. So now do you file a suit for the embryo in her lab now? I mean, it's a crazy decision that doesn't make any sense, in the sense that you can't create a person from a lab embryo, no matter how you do it. Is you have to go inside a woman for 9 months or 40 weeks, whatever, to create a child. So it's a bizarre decision, all brought on by the evolution and the overturning of Roe versus Wade. So this year on our ballot across the country, we're going to have women freedom and reproductive rights on every state's ballot, because this is going to become an important issue in the upcoming presidential election.
In order to have a person, you have to have the joining of something from the man and something from the woman, right? And
Yes.
does that then form the embryo? Right? And so they freeze that, is that correct?
That's correct.
They freeze
Well,
that.
The patient's eggs are fertilized outside the woman's body and then reimplanted.
Okay, so it's been fertilized. That's what I want to get clear, Vanita. It's been fertilized by the semen from the man, right? The egg. And then it's frozen and later put in the woman's body, correct?
Well, it started with the fusion of an ovum and a sperm. and that
Okay.
produce what they call the zygote, right? And
Right.
the
Okay.
zygote
Okay.
undergoes multiple cell division, producing a blastocyst. Blastocyst implante in the uterus, and the internal cell mass produce the embryo. So it's a multi-step process.
Okay. I just wanted to get my chemistry correct. So, and now they're saying that that's life. That's life. This. I can't see how that can stand across this nation with intelligent people analyzing it. I'm not putting down Alabama necessarily and its laws in the past, but it has not led the country in laws in the past either. I don't see this as something that our Supreme Court will uphold. Is that what we're fearful of? Even though it's a Trump Supreme Court, this is a horrendous, horrific, crazy decision. There's so much that happened to an embryo before development of a person. And we usually say so many months have to take place before we recognize it as being a person, 32 months, right? So how can we go back and say an embryo is a person? I hate to define it as property, but it's surely not a person. It doesn't make sense.
And there are 268,000 IVF treatments across the United States every year. And up to 80% of Republicans, they support IVF procedures. And a Pew study showed that 60% of Republican women support greater access to IVF. And so what we're seeing is, well, first of all, making it harder for families to have children. That's a losing argument, right? And so we're seeing almost immediately GOP leaders flip-flopping on the stance when U.S. Senator Tuberville was interviewed this week. Almost in that same interview, he flip-flopped, and it was clear that he may not have even known what IVF was. But they're scrambling at this point. And I think we'll see legislation that will address the Supreme Court's outrageous decision.
Yeah, I mean that's why
counsel, there's something very important. The senator from Alabama, Tuberville, when he was asked about the branch of the government, he did not know that there were three branches of government. He's a U.S. senator. A senator from Alabama, Tuberville, did not know the three branches of government. It was shocking of such an ill-informed person in the U.S. Senate. So when you give him a scientific analysis of IVF, he may have been thinking of something to do with football or something, because he probably didn't have a clue what the hell he was talking about.
Well, I just said Alabama doesn't lead the country in law necessarily in history, but I'm not putting them down for education and intelligence. But it just doesn't make sense, though, to hold an embryo out as a person and be able to charge people with murder. I mean, that's about as ridiculous as we can get.
And of course, Alabama is one of those states that have passed an abortion ban. And as one of our callers has indicated, that on the one hand, a female who is raped must have that child, right? But back to Senator Tuberville, initially he stated that he was all for the ruling.
Wow. And for my audience, Renee sent us a number. She has had triplets by IVF, and she says, on one hand, Alabama law says a female must have a rapist child. However, IVF baby seekers cannot seek babies. And then she said, eggs can be frozen without being fertilized for future fertilization as well as sperm. That's a good point. Renee basically make a really good scientific point.
Mhm.
Eggs can be fertilized for a long period of time without being fertilized with the sperm. So this is really.
I don't understand that. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. It can be fertilized for a long period of time, but without being fertilized by a sperm?
Well, see, you collect an egg, you freeze it, you collect the sperm, you speed it, and you don't have to what she was saying is that you don't have to put the two together for a while.
Simultaneously.
You can keep them.
Then it's not
I
an
guess, in a
embryo
lab.
if you don't put the two together, do you?
Well, she's calling them, and scientifically, and she's also referencing, I mean, this is a science and you're dealing with embryologists, and
Yes.
she's referencing blastocytes, which they're scientific names at each stage of this process, which is very complex. And she says that the blastocytes can be frozen at day 3, 5, or 6 of fertilization in the clinic, and they can be stored for long periods of time.
Yeah, it's
It doesn't become an embryo until the sperm fertilizes the egg, right? The egg alone is not a person. The sperm is not a person. They have to combine to be a person, right?
that's
Correct.
correct.
To be fertilized. Okay. I'm still trying to learn the law. I don't know this science.
Well,
An embryo is the early development stage
Yeah.
while it's in the egg or within the uterus.
Embryo
In
is the early
humans, the term is applied to the unborn child until the end of the 7th week following conception. From the 8th
Okay.
week, an unborn child is called a fetus. So we're getting into very technical,
Okay.
scientific.
Yes, we are, and it's beyond my present knowledge. I haven't looked at it in a while. So I think it's still a ridiculous ruling that an embryo can be the grounds for charging a person with murder or criminal.
well, you know, the
Jesus.
term in vitro mean in a glass. So it's a
Right.
process where you take the egg from the woman's ovary, put it into a tube, and mix it with her sperm. So this scientific process is how the fertilization process occurred. So, but they've been able to make this scientific process even more sophisticated, because I was seeing some of the articles, they said they could freeze the ovaries and freeze the sperm. And so this is really a really complex process that got a lot of moving parts. The point is that the fact that if you're a medical provider and you're told that the embryo is a person, I mean, why would you risk your medical license by involving the process? Or along the way, anybody can make a mistake. You can slip and fall. I mean, you could lose your heating system. And then the other issue is, what about pregnant women who have miscarriage? Okay, let's go to Renee.
Hold on,
Renee's
baby. I'm on the
line.
phone. I'm on the phone.
Renee, you have a
Hi.
comment?
Hi,
Go
how
ahead,
are
Renee.
you?
Yes, go
Hi.
ahead.
Yeah, it's a little complicated to put into a text. Well, I'm Renee as well. It's a little complicated to put into a text because you're right. It's a lot of moving parts, and it really depends on your clinic that you go to and what the clinic wants to do. So basically, and different clinics work different ways. You can either harvest your eggs, which is they retrieve the eggs and they freeze them, and they retrieve your partner's sperm, or you get donated sperm and they freeze those. They don't have to combine them right away. They could just be, but they'll be in the same lab as an embryo or a blastocyte. The blastocyte and embryos are pretty much the same thing. It's just how long they've been fertilized. That's it, before they freeze them. So you can do a 3, 5, 6 day fertilization and freeze them. And you can keep, in most places would store them for 2 years, and then you have to re-up and pay for additional years or whatever. But yeah, it's quite complicated. It's a lot of hormone shots. It's a lot of timing. And by the way, they're not in test tubes. That's the old idea. They're in Petri dishes, and they're put into these cycle things, these lab machines where they rotate them, fertilize them, they check the eggs, they check the sperm. It is quite complicated. So for Alabama to go and make a decision like that, not knowing what's all involved in it, is kind of insane to me.
Be polite.
Well, how many kids have you had, Renee, through this in vitro IVF process?
I've only done IVF in my last set of kids. I have triplets who are 6 years old now. And I went through the process twice. And then the first time we weren't successful. And then the second time we wanted one child. We ended up having 3. So, but they're great kids. They're 6 years old. But it is a process. This is what people don't understand. These women have been taking hormone shots, been taking medication, perhaps their partner too, to make their sperm more potent or whatever. These people got to go through months of this before they retrieve an egg. They got to time the cycle. So there are going to be a lot of devastated parents out there, or future parents. I mean, it's a long process. It's about 3 months to prep to do embryo transplant. You can do a fresh cycle one too, where you don't have to freeze the eggs and the sperm after fertilization. They can fertilize it. You wait until the eggs get to be, till the embryo gets to be a certain size, or till the blastocyte becomes a certain size, and then they can transfer them without ever being frozen. So you got a couple of options, and most people try to do fresh cycles, and then they freeze the remainders just in case the fresh cycle doesn't work, and they have other options to come back and try it again. It is a long process. Sometimes it takes years. Sorry, that's one of my triplets now asking me about homework.
Wow.
Okay, baby, I'm on the phone.
You know, Nathaniel, I recently represented a young lady, and I may have conferred with you about this, who had agreed to donate her egg to this doctor's office for the fertilization with the sperm from the husband of a woman who couldn't get pregnant. And what they have to go through to get to the stage of making sure she's fertile at that particular time when they extract the egg from her uterus is a long process where they, like the lady said, they have to take a bunch of shots. And I got involved because she discovered who the recipient of her egg was going to be. And she didn't agree with the family background and political aspect, because she thought, because she was bisexual, that the father would be against it because he was a military man. Even though he was African-American, he was very conservative and against gays. So it was complicated. And this here reminds me of that. It was complicated. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing to that you made a really good point? This is also going to start to affect women who are surrogates, who are carrying someone else's fetus to term, it's going to affect donors. You are correct about that. Donors are not going to be responsible.
Renee, is this an expensive process? About how much does it cost to go through this process?
Yes, I was quoted in before we went to North Cyprus to have ours done, because they had better equipment, state of the art, and it was cheaper, a lot cheaper. In Austin, Texas, where I used to live, I was quoted $30,000 for one attempt with one egg. Wow. $30,000 for one attempt with one egg. It is very, very expensive. If women decide to break away from the U.S., because that's what a lot of them are going to have to do if they keep doing this, if this law remains on the books and other states gets it, you can go to Cyprus and have a wonderful, vacation, and get the same procedure done for less than 10,000 American dollars. And it includes your vacation stay, all the food you can eat, travel, everything.
But you got to be rich to do that, Renee. I mean, you got airline fare. I mean,
No, I'm telling you, $10,000 covers everything.
wow.
So
Everybody.
do you want one shot for $30,000 in the United States, or do you want an option to have, several shots for $10,000 plus a vacation, airfare, food, everything included? Now, yes, it's a lot of money, but we're talking people who are willing to pay $30,000. So for them, $10,000 is wonderful.
Well, I don't understand this. So,
And plus, you don't have to worry about being convicted of murder, for not using the rest of your MBs,
well,
So-
how do they insert the embryo into? What's the process? You say they give you a shot?
No. The shots are for hormones. So a woman's body has to have a certain level of hormones to trigger the eggs to grow and do all of that. So it really is a complicated process. So you have to take estrogen, so much estrogen for so long. You have to take other hormones. You have to take vitamins. I mean, it's a long process, and it does take a lot to prep your body. You have to work with your cycle too, so that you could time when they're going to retrieve the eggs, because the eggs have to be a certain size before they can retrieve them out of your ovaries. So they have to be a certain size. You have to be there at the clinic at a specific time, because if you don't go in a certain window, you will miss your retrieval of eggs, and then you have to start all over again. So it's a real time consuming, and it's a very specific process that is, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And for that senator, Tuttle, whatever his name is,
Tuberville.
he doesn't know any. Yeah, he knows nothing about the workings of his own body. So I know he doesn't know anything about what an IVF process looks like.
Well, thank you, Renee, for explaining this process.
Oh,
And what state are you?
You're welcome. I currently live in New York City.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
New York.
For calling in today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having this show. I'm really disturbed by this ruling, so I really appreciate you giving me that time. And y'all have a great show. I'll continue listening.
Thank
Okay.
you, Renee. This is devastating.
Okay,
So
thank
much.
you.
There are families that are trying to get pregnant right now, and they're in the middle of the process.
Exactly.
That Renee has
There
just
you go.
described.
That's the problem.
And so what
Exactly.
do you do?
Thank you. I'm going to hang up.
As she said, it's a very complex process. It's very expensive. There's a lot of precise timing involved. And so this is just devastating that their treatments may now be put on hold as a result of this arbitrary decision that obviously has no understanding of reproductive health care.
And I hate to, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but they advertise for young women who volunteer for contributing their eggs. They pay them $3,000 if they can do that. They have to go through a screening process. They got to take shots. And a lot of young women that are in college looking for employment, this is a way of making money.
Wow. Okay. Next topic. This week, another bombshell against Donald Trump. The judgment in his civil fraud trial was entered on Friday. Forget this. $454,156,783.05 is now accruing interest post-judgment of $100,000 each day. And this is on top of the recent $83.3 million verdict by E. Jean Carroll in the $5 million. So we got a guy run for president. A jury said that he is a rapist. He also had been adjudicated to be a fraudster. And the judgment says that he cannot run a business in New York. So we have a person running for president of the United States who says he's unfit to operate a business in the state of New York, but yet now he's running to operate the business of the United States of America. I mean, where are we going with this political climate? This is insane that you can have a person running for president with so much baggage.
Well,
I
as
don't
you
want
know,
to say,
Attorney Lee, he asked for an additional 30 days to pay the $83 million to Jean Carroll. And that was denied by the court this week. He also has 30 days to pay the $455 million in the New York case. And my question is, where is he going to get the money? Do you think he has cash on hand, which may be possible? He either has to post that amount or tender deeds or other property through some type of some type of bond for this amount. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, he's going to appeal the ruling of the court.
it's going to be interesting when he does not post the bond that everybody's obligated to post. How he gets around that, we'll see. But we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. I think we're going to see Mr. Trump on the ballot in November.
Well, they have the South Carolina primary today, and he gave a very interesting speech over a couple of days ago. You know, he was on stage in South Carolina, and they've been circulating it on the internet, and it's kind of a bizarre situation in terms of listening to audience, and with today's artificial intelligence, you hate to repeat things like that because you don't know whether or not it's something created by artificial intelligence or actually true. But they've been circulating this where this video seemed to depict him saying, you're looking at an audience and say, it's so much like I can only see the Black folks out there. You know, it was such a bizarre set of circumstances, and I'm thinking of all the dumb things to say, you know, but the problem we got though is that, and you are correct, counselors, that is that you got this massive judgment of over $500 million, and we learned that he paid out over $50 million from campaign funds to pay legal fees. Now you got all these appeals, you got the post bond. I'm not sure how much the bond has to be on $500 million.
Would that be another criminal offense or civil offense for him to use campaign funds to pay legal fees?
I'm not a criminal lawyer, so I can't comment on that, but.
Well, but you're a politician, you're very politically oriented. You know that you can't use campaign funds for your personal life, right?
They've indicted a lot of congressional people for using campaign for personal use. But I think former president and now Citizen Trump may be above the law in these type of issues because we're seeing a new use of funds. And I don't see the Justice Department at this point in time doing anything about it. So it's really interesting to see what occurs, but it appears that the legal strategy that he is employing is to run out the clock. He's thinking that if I can just get past November the 6th of this year, if I get elected president, then I do something in my favor. I just pardon myself, along with everybody else, along with the people that try to overthrow the government.
You wipe it out with student loans and everything will start over.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where this is going in the sense that how can we have a person with so much baggage still be the Republican front runner? It's just mind-boggling. I don't understand it.
Well, can I say this? And I hate to keep traveling it, but did he say something that black folks are going to buy his tennis shoes, or because he wear tennis shoes, black folks are going to be supportive of him? And it seemed as though, I don't know if it's true or not, but the narrative is that there are a lot of black folks adding on to the support Donald Trump campaign. I don't know if there's anything to support that statement, but that's what's coming out. So that'll make more black folks join his campaign because that's what is being said. It's a big lie. I remember when I was in school 50 years ago, Russia was known as perpetrator of the big lie. It's called different things now, but it's the same thing. If you tell someone something more than twice, it becomes half truth, even though it's a big lie. And
It's
that's what we
about
see.
controlling the narrative, as you say,
Right, Vanita.
Attorney
Right.
Grimes, and we've commented many times on this show, and we're living in a very serious time. And that's why it's critically important that we recommit to voting, not only in the national elections, but from police chief to your local judges. As we say, all politics are local, right? And so we have to really recommit to voting and educating ourselves. We've got to read and we've got to verify these alternative facts. They're not even alternative facts. I don't even know. 5 years ago, we didn't even have that term in our lexicon, right? But people are being paid to spread misinformation in our communities, right? To perpetuate the lie that a certain former administration has actually implemented policies that benefit and support African Americans.
And let me say
African
this.
Americans some African Americans are being paid to perpetrate that false information in
Yes,
our neighborhoods.
some of our most popular African Americans are doing that. And let me add to that, please. I said at the beginning, Saturday Night Live is hiring this guy, Gillis, who hosts its show, who is an avowed racist. Okay, they fired him 4 years ago for his racist comments about Asians, and he perpetrates racism. He has a podcast that he admits to being a racist. And there's a full-page article in yesterday's Times. I like to read the closing paragraph because I think it's important that we realize what is happening here. Nathaniel, may I please?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it says people who make and enjoy racist comedy often defend it on the grounds that comedians should not be held to the same standards as politicians. It's true, they shouldn't, but we should all be held to high standards when it comes to bigotry. And the standard for, quote, don't be a bigot, end of quote, is actually quite low. As with its booking Nikki Haley, who has opposed marriage equality and demonized trans people. SNL's olive branch to Shane Gillis reflects a dangerous failure to learn from the hate movements that blossomed during the Trump era. We have seen what happens when racism's popularity is mistaken for legitimacy. I'm not sure it's a mistake we can afford to keep making. My point is that we're going backwards. You know, we pretty much, and he's got Dave Chappelle and some other well-known comedians supporting him, that we should be free to say what we want to say, put down people and ha, ha, ha about it. And we're supposed to be coming to an educational stage of society and civilization that, hold up, N-word is not an acceptable word. It ain't funny no more to me. You follow me? It ain't funny because when I hear the N-word, I shiver. And the reason I have these pictures behind me is to remind me that a lot of people, I believe, you know, when they were hung, the last thing they heard was the N-word, being called the N-word. So it doesn't make it a popular word to me anymore. And I'm guilty of using it in the past. But now, one of our most renowned, influential entertainment shows, Saturday Night Live. A lot of people sit down and have their meal watching Saturday Night Live. They look at it for humor and leadership. Now they're putting this man on to laugh at people again because of their race. And so our established institutions are going backwards.
Attorney Banks?
Well, in 2019, this Shane Gillis was fired just after he was being named to the cast of SNL.
Right.
And since that time, he's become a rising stand-up star. And as Attorney Grimes said, he's set to appear on the show. Is he hosting the show tonight?
I think so, Vanita. I would imagine so because it's yesterday's article.
And he was dropped from Saturday Night Live in 2019 when multiple instances surfaced of him using language that the show called offensive, hurtful, and unacceptable. He made slurs against Chinese people, along with homophobic slurs. But interestingly, since he was fired, his star has continued to grow. And he's had debuted specials on YouTube, and he's amassed about 24 million views. And it looks like Bud Light has recently announced that it was partnering with Mr. Gillis.
One of my problems is that it's been a difficult path for me to watch a lot of the comedy shows, counselors, because they use such vulgar, offensive language. And I remember the day that we used to have comedians that was funny, that did not use excessive use of the N-word or talk about private parts and things like that. They just were funny. Now, it seemed like comedy is taking a sharp turn towards vulgarity. And I see more and more of that when I see the specials on TV. And it's hard for me to watch them all the way through because they get in this vulgarity is so severe. It's like the norms in our society, we've normalized bad behavior. We normalize obscene things, and the more you hear it, I guess people get accustomed to it. They think it's okay, but it's not okay. You know.
And that's what I'm saying about. That's what I'm saying about the effect of Saturday Night Live, Nate. These young people don't differentiate. They don't think about the long-term effect of this language.
Well, I think that so long as they have an audience, so long as people pay a lot of money and look like this person who engaged in this vulgarity is very popular. And I was looking at the notes on him, saying that he's got 24 million views on his special, 24 million. And that's insane.
What do we put on the 24 million views? I mean, I know guys in the industry, music industry especially, there's a way of putting those views that number is really unrealistic and is not. Again, we're dealing with the ability to create false image. So my hearing about the 24 million doesn't make him acceptable to me. You know, Trump got 50 million people supporting him, and it surely doesn't make him acceptable to me. So I'm sorry.
Great point, Attorney Grimes. And I don't know what Patreon is, but that apparently is a podcast platform. And I'm seeing that he has the most subscribers of any podcast on Patreon, with more than 80,000 paying listeners, tens of thousands more than the next highest. Now, again, he's fired in 2019 from SNL, right?
Right.
And he's debuting this evening as the host.
Wow.
Now, what do you think, for example, Dave Chappelle has controversial
And
statements in his act as well.
right. And I'm across the board. You know, I don't appreciate Dave Chappelle's freedom in using the N-word either. I mean, it's beginning to be, you got to set your standards. I used to love Dave Chappelle because I thought he was creative, progressive, he was new, but hey, I'm not that supportive of him anymore.
Yeah, he is a generation of talent, but when I watched this special, he has excessive use of the N-word. And I don't think
Right.
that when I was watching part of it, I turned it off because I'm thinking, well, why does he think that somehow make it more funny or
Right.
more appealing? I don't get it. You know, I mean, he's got such phenomenal creative talent. And but I wish that he would cease that, because once he normalized that, then other folk will say, what's wrong with calling them the N-word? You know, and people cheering them on. And, you know, I just don't like that part of it. You know, even though that's a generational talent, I just think it's wrong.
It is. Thank you.
But
there will be some backlash, I'm sure, regarding Mr. Gillis and his performance tonight on SNL.
And there will be some appreciation, though, of him too, Vanita. That's my concern, that Saturday Night Live should be more responsible than this. That's all I'm saying. I expected more of them. It was one of my favorite shows to watch on Saturday night if I had nothing else to do, just to be entertained. But I don't like racism anymore. I don't like the making fun of it. It ain't funny, you know, and I hate the N-word.
now, there's another legal issue that affecting our country that's critical. That is the influx of immigrants through our border, and it's been a really sordid topic. What happened is that since the inception of America, people have come to the country as immigrants, and the newscaster, they could confuse immigrant with migrants, but they keep saying migrants instead of what they are, immigrants. It's a very important distinction here. Well, what happened is, in order to deal with an immigration problem, people can come into the country under certain criteria. But the ones that are given legal asylum, there's a judicial process. So in order to deal with immigration crisis, you have to have Border Patrol agent to fend off the wave of people coming in to prevent it and return them. And then you have to have a judicial system to properly process people. Judicial system have to have judges and lawyers. They don't work for free, they get paid. Border agents don't work for free, they have to be paid. The Democrats passed a bill to send to Republican Congress to reduce the influx of illegal immigrants coming into the country. Donald Trump says, given Biden an election win, will help his candidacy. So to hell with America, do not allow that bill to become law. And then at the same time, what's insulting is that they're running saying that Biden is not protecting the border. At the same time, they've deliberately sabotaged the process by denying money. And the same thing with Ukraine. So what we've seen now is a radical departure of what makes American exceptional. That is that regardless of our differences, we come together as a nation for the good of the country. Certainly that the failure to try to protect the border and make a political issue and lie about it, quite frankly, is insulting. And this affects all of us because this is a problem that we have to deal with. And we see now that it's being sabotaged. We see up front who's doing the sabotaging and why they're doing it, solely for political gain and to lie about it. They want to blame someone else. So like the IVF, what causes the problem is the Supreme Court judges overruled Wade, and then so now Trump comes along and says, I'm against it. Was your appointment that caused the problem? Now you're trying to say you're against something that you caused. Well, we had the same thing with the border crisis. When Trump ran for president last time, he promised to build a wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. Well, one of 10,000 lies. But the point I'm making is that it's shameful that this is such a political issue. Attorney Banks and Grimes. It's just insane to me that we see a radical departure from normal behavior of politicians. This is outside the bounds.
Thank you for that analysis, Nate, to show we're just pawns in someone else's game.
This is a political issue that has existed, frankly, now for decades in terms of the need for a comprehensive immigration policy and strategy.
Yep.
Well, there was a corollary adverse effect when I grew up in the South and the immigrants will harvest the sugar cane, they will work in the fields, and you pick oranges. They did a lot of the physical labor type work that Americans didn't want to do. In response to the reduction in immigrants, that did a lot of physical labor work, some states now are amending their child labor laws to let the 11, 12-year-olds work. And because what happened is that they get cheaper labor, but it's more dangerous for our kids. But the point I'm making is that this is a crisis that American legislators, our laws, must reflect the urgency of the situation. We urge our politicians to put aside these crazy differences, because there was something that happened in the last year of Trump administration that everybody forgot about. When the country had this terrible pandemic, in 2020, when Trump was running for president, the Democrats passed a bill to allow everyone to get additional check and funding. And when they got the money, Trump made the process delayed because he wanted to make sure his name was on the documents in the letter to make sure everybody thought that they were getting a check from Donald Trump. So, but the Democrat did that. And guess what? It convinced some people that Trump somehow gave him money, which was a lie, but he still lost the election by 7 million votes. So the fact that you get something that's good for America don't necessarily mean that you're going to win an election. That was a perfect example. So I hope that our legislators and the people could contact their representative to let them know, particularly if you have a Republican, that they need to vote to get this bill passed so that we can have safer borders. Our country depends on people making responsible decisions like that. Milton and Vanita.
I have that hope too, Nate, but that hope doesn't kill the lies that they keep perpetrating and putting out there. He's going to continue with that method of operation, and it comes frightfully close to being successful. I mean, whereas ordinarily you would think a person that has lied as much as this man has lied about his benefiting the country and certain people would get busted, would get caught, would get exposed. And no matter whether you expose him or not, he keeps doing it, and it just covers it back up. So, yeah, we got hope.
Yeah, one final comment, then we're off the air, Attorney Banks.
My final comment is that many of these issues can seem overwhelming. However, remember listening audience that ultimately we, the people, have the power, because our power is in our vote.
Well, thank you. Closing word. Don't forget, your election is coming up soon. This year we have a presidential election. Make sure you call at least 10 folks to make sure they get registered and they vote in the upcoming election. We have a lot at stake. Democracy is on the ballot. Women reproductive rights and freedom are on the ballot. And then we've seen the elimination of affirmative action. This is Black History Month, and that's something that we probably should have mentioned, that's been a big issue in our country. But thank you all for calling in today. And may God bless and keep you until we talk to you once again. Take care, everyone. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.